One of the mandates of Icon audiobooks is to introduce and in some cases reintroduce people of all generations to the inspirational, classical, spiritual literature of the ages. The following audiobook falls into that very select and important category. Here you will find ageless wisdom, timeless truisms, and unbounded inspiration. From the ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, to the voluminous Vedas, the teachings of great saints like Meher Baba, Paramahansa Yogananda, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Kahil Gibran, and Ram Dass, to the humble parables of Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, as well as avatars such as Sri Krishna, Rama, and the Buddha. Icon casts the net wide to include the greatest insights of the ever-expanding spiritual universe. As an old incredible string band song goes, "May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way home." I'm Jagannatha Das.
The Vrajmandal Bhumi extends for about 84 koshas on this planet Earth. In other words, the Vrajmandal Bhumi, also known as Vraj Bhumi or Mathura Mandal or Vrindavan Dham or simply Vrindavan, covers an area of 1,453 square miles and stretches from Agra in the south to Banchari in the north. Vrindavan means the land where the cows, cowherd men, cowherd boys, and cowherd girls wander, and is known as the Vraj. Vraj particularly denotes the land where the Supreme Person, Sri Krishna, performs his pastimes. Vraj Bhumi is made up of 12 beautiful forests and several other sub-forests, with the river Yamuna meandering throughout the entire land. One of these forests is called Vrindavan. The Vrindavan town, which contains many of the important temples and pastime places of Sri Krishna, is also in this forest. This Vrajmandal, although appearing to be a part of this world, is not destroyed at the time of universal destruction. In fact, this Vraj Bhumi is a manifestation of Goloka Vrindavan, the eternal abode of the Lord Sri Krishna in the spiritual sky, in this material world. Only once in a day of Lord Brahma, which means once in 4.32 billion solar years, does the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna appear on this planet in his original form of Shama Sundar. And the Vraj Bhumi is the holy place where the Lord Sri Krishna appears and performs his sweet pastimes. It is said that Vrindavan is Chintamani Dham, the abode of the Lord made of wish-fulfilling touchstones. Brahmaji sings the glories of Vrindavan Dham in the Brahma Samhita as follows. I worship that supreme abode of Vrindavan Dham, where the Supreme Lord Krishna is the only lover, where the Vraj Gopis are the beloveds, where every tree and creeper is a transcendental desire tree, where the earth is made of spiritual touchstones and the water is nectar, where speech is like melodious song and movements are like dance, where great divine oceans of milk continually flow from the udders of uncountable Surabi cows, and where transcendental time is eternal, without past or future, so that even half a moment never slips away. In this material world, only rare saintly persons can understand the true nature of this abode. However, it is not possible to perceive the actual Vrindavan Dham as described in the scriptures with our conditioned material vision. Vrindavan may externally appear to be just like any ordinary town or village in India, and one may see sewage running in the street, hogs bathing in that sewage, but behind all of this, the Lord is performing his unlimited pastimes. There is a very thin veil of the curtain of Yoga Maya, which covers our vision from seeing the real Vrindavan. The Skanda Purana dates Mathura's history back to Satya Yuga, more than 2 million years ago, when Dhruva Maharaj performed austerities here. The Srimad Bhagavatam relates that over 1 million years ago, during the Treta Yuga, the Mathura area was a dense forest inhabited by a giant ogre named Madhu. Being a conceited demon, Madhu named this forest after himself, Madhuban, and bequeathed it to his son, the fierce Lavana. At that time, Lord Rama was ruling the earth as the king of Ayodhya. The superhero Lavana challenged Rama to a single combat, but Rama considered Lavana an unworthy opponent and so sent his younger brother to battle him. After killing Lavana, he hewed down the woods at Madhuban and founded on its site the city of Madhupuri. Living in the beautiful land of Vrindavan and tending cows, Krishna manifested his transcendental pastimes with his parents and friends, the Gopas, cowherd boys, and the Gopis, milkmaids. Through the ages, these pastimes have given joy to sages who worship them as replicas of the Lord's eternal activities in the spiritual sky. Dancing with the gopis, herding cows, and playing with the cowherd boys, killing demons and protecting the inhabitants of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna at all times displayed his divine opulence. If one circumambulates any temple of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu, one becomes freed from innumerable sins. But by circumambulating the entire Vrindavan, one automatically circumambulates over 5,000 temples, all at one time. The effulgent ground of Vrindavan is fashioned with many wonderful and colorful chintamani jewels. The trees and vines are full of blissful spiritual fruits and flowers. The birds make a great tumult by reciting the hymns of the Samveda. And the lakes and streams are filled with transcendental nectar. It is a land of Krishna's eternal, transcendental pastimes. In the sacred land of Vrindavan, the results of all devotional activities performed here are multiplied more than 1,000 times. Therefore, one can make rapid advancement if one lives here without committing any offenses in the holy Dham. If, however, one does commit offenses, they are also magnified 1,000 times. Therefore, one is advised to very carefully avoid committing any offenses in Vrindavan Dham. I'm from a completely secular, I don't even think agnostic family. There wasn't a thought given to God or even anything spiritual. You lived, you try, and you die. My mother in particular was cynical about religion, so there was no religious training in my house, not a thought of it. In 1967, I took my first hit of Owsley LSD. And as Paul McCartney once said, I was kind of afraid to take it because I heard it changes you forever. Oh, he was right, it does, and it did. And it changed me in a good way, meaning that I, as a young man, very young, I think 13 when I tripped the first time, and it went on for 3 years maybe, with some regularity. I was a hippie, yeah? It made me understand that there was more to life than what we experience through our senses as they normally work. There is then presented to you the possibility that consciousness is not emanating from the brain necessarily, but perhaps the brain is more like a radio receiver, and that stream of consciousness that you identify as yourself and your being, what you are and what you do, may just be being received as an open channel from some larger source. We don't know, do we? But those possibilities were presented to me for the first time. I happened to be at quite a famous now, iconic rock festival in Toronto at the Canadian National Exhibition in 1969. It was Janis Joplin, The Doors, The Grateful Dead. I've forgotten the name, but they were all traveling on a train together. And they had stopped in Toronto. And I'd gotten my mother to drive me up there and drop me off and buy me a ticket. This was virtually one of the first outings I'd ever done on my own. I think I was 14. So outside the concert, people were milling around, and I happened to see some very strange-looking guys who turned out to be Hare Krishna devotees. I didn't know what that was. I thought they were just like really tripped out hippies that had, done something too much and went crazy and shaved their head and put on women's clothes. I didn't know what it was. But it turned out that they were devotees of Krishna. And they were handing out literature. Of course, I didn't have any money, or not too much, that's for sure. They gave me a small booklet that was called Who is Crazy? And when you flipped it over, there was another one called Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure. So I took that home. We lived in a place called Orchard Beach, New York, a lovely pastoral place, highly recommended in Niagara County, about 15 miles away from Niagara Falls. I was pretty much raised there on a beautiful old wooden home on a cliff overlooking Lake Ontario with our private beach and so forth. Lovely place and very spiritual place, too. Watching the sunset and fill the sky with colors and marbleized visions of, the phenomena of earthly existence and power. Just wonderful to live there. And this was every day through the picture window or the back porch. I'd see this presentation of nature, of power, of something beyond and bigger than me. So I had this book. I think it was the only book I had. And I read it. And I read it. And I read it. And then I read it again. And then after that, I believe, let me think for a minute, yes, again, and over and over and over. And I especially liked the part at the end that said, if you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, your life will be sublime. Whoa, sublime. I wasn't counting on sublime. Maybe a little bit cooler or more fun or sublime. Wow, that's a tall order. So not having too much to do, being the youngest of 5 children and all the others having long left, I lived with my mother there, and I sat in my room or walked in Crawl Park or on the beach or on the terraces or on the bluff. And I would chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I didn't know any songs or tunes or anything like that. I just said the words. And I chanted for, my goodness me, could have been 6 to 9 months, a lot. Morning, noon, and night, because I wanted my life to be sublime. Hey, why not? And I remember one night, around 6 o'clock, I was in my room. And I remember that as I was chanting, all the hairs on my body stood up and were kind of electrified. And there was a tingling sensation, and I was perplexed and shocked, literally. I wonder if this could be connected with this near constant chanting. Well, not too long after that, I came to understand that there was an organization called ISKCON, and that on Bidwell Parkway in Buffalo, they had a temple. And so I hitchhiked there.
I met the devotees. I went to a Sunday feast. I got to understand a little bit more about what was behind this bhakti or devotional yoga, part of the Eightfold Yoga path, in fact, the highest manifestation of yoga. And then I would hitchhike back home to Orchid and chant some more. Well, this went on for a long time. And I would attend the Sunday feast in Buffalo with some regularity. It was there that I heard about the Guru, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He had such a distinguished, even royal look about him. Despite his age unknown to me, my goodness, in his 70s, but that he might as well have been 500 because I was just a kid. I had no concept of these things. Just a very striking, erudite-looking older gentleman whose simple book and 16-word mantra had, at that point, changed my life. Not in any dramatic way, but I was developing faith, which seemed to go hand in hand with the chanting. Gradually, there grew within me a desire to meet Prabhupada, as he was affectionately known to his disciples. But I could never quite put those pieces together. That is, if I visited the Toronto temple, he had just left the day before. Or L.A., or wherever else my travels took me, I could never put it together. And he'd always just left. Prabhupada, you see, was constantly traveling, and in those days I did a good bit of it myself. By now I was 18, and I was in London visiting a friend in Coventry. Well, we had a falling out. I was with my girlfriend, later to be my wife, Vrndavana, and we had nowhere to go after this disagreement with my old buddy Tom Gerard, except to London. It's the only place we knew, and the only place in London we knew to go was the Hare Krishna temple, ISKCON, at this time at Bury Place, in the heart of central London. Well, we knocked on the door at 10 o'clock when everybody was sound asleep, and the fellow who finally answered the door said to me, beaming, "Prabhupada is coming tomorrow." You gotta be kidding me. At last, I get to meet Srila Prabhupada. So, at this time, I had very long hair. I was absolute hippie. Never smoked too much pot. Made me paranoid. No reason to take a drug that makes you paranoid, thought I. So in those days, I was pretty much following what I later found out were the 4 regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, which was no meat, fish, or eggs. That was easy. No gambling. Never even thought of it. No intoxication. Been there, done that. No illicit sex. Well, let's call it the 3 regulative principles, because I had a girlfriend. We were very much in love. And that's where I found myself on the steps of the Bury Place ISKCON temple at 18 years old with Vrinda, with Prabhupada coming the very next day. Now, everybody was given a task, cleaning the temple or whatever it might be. And they said to me, "You, when Prabhupada comes through the door, you're upstairs at the window, which overlooks the front step, and we have a big basket of rose petals. And as he just begins to walk towards the door, you start sprinkling these rose petals down, and this will be a very transcendental environmental effect. That's your service. That's your seva." Okay, fine. So at the appointed hour, it was 2 o'clock, I remember. Prabhupada pulled up not in John Lennon's white Rolls Royce, but in a Volkswagen with Brahmananda and maybe 1 or 2 other devotees. How they fit, I don't know. That's a city, that's a miracle unto itself. Brahmananda got out first, then Prabhupada.
As soon as I saw Srila Prabhupada, this whole idea of me dumping the flowers just went out the window, and not literally because I just put the box down by the floor, ran down the stairs. I just got so excited, I ran up to Srila Prabhupada. I got into his face. I didn't know anything about Vaishnava or devotee etiquette. I said, Prabhupada, I'm Jeffrey Giuliano. I'm from Orchid, New York, and I've been reading your books. They're fantastic, and I've been chanting. And he looked at me, and he said, you can walk with me, but please don't talk anything. I had mixed emotions about this. I was a little bit hurt that there was a sort of apparent rebuff, but hey, I was way out of line. I mean, everybody was very respectful, paying their obeisances, keeping their distance, and I'm up in the face of the Jagat Guru of the universe, possibly. So I did as he said. I walked with him. Then when we got to the stairs, it was quite a narrow stairway at Bury Place. It suddenly became absolutely filled with senior devotees, sannyasis, Brahmananda, Gargamuni, all these, Satsrup, all these big guns, as we used to call them, and there was no way that I could even get onto the first step, let alone go up into his room for the darshan that he was giving all the devotees. So I wandered off into the prasadam room, which was directly to the right at the bottom of the stairs, and I just sat there, feeling that, well, that didn't go very well. I kind of blew that one. And I certainly can't get upstairs and be part of the darshan. So then Prabhupada, from some entrance at the back of the room, walked in alone with his cane, looking very regal. I immediately paid my obeisances as he walked up to me. After so doing, I looked up and he said, "You are a very good boy. You will go back to home." And I said, "Back to Godhead." And slowly putting his head back, he said simply, "Jai." Then he turned around, leaning on his bamboo cane, and walked back out of the room and disappeared. Now, I tell that story to people, and they say, "Wow, you're really lucky that Prabhupada told you you'd go back to Godhead." But I then hasten to remind them that he didn't say when. And that's really the crux of the matter. When does that occur? There's an old story about a devotee who asked a guru when he would go to Vaikuntha, when he would be reunited with his true self, his eternal body of Sat Chit Ananda, or eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And the guru said, as many leaves are on that tree, that's how many lifetimes you'll have to live. And he was very disappointed in him. Said, "So many, there's thousands of leaves there." Thereafter, the next day, another devotee came and asked the same question. And the spiritual master gave the same answer. And the devotee was dancing in ecstasy, saying, "What? Only just a few thousand more lifetimes, and I will realize my true self and be forever united with the Supreme Personality of Godhead," and he was in bliss. So therein lies the tale. I'm going back, just like you. But I don't know, and you don't know when. The other thing that I would say about that encounter with Srila Prabhupada is, how is it, in the middle of a darshan, with half of the governing body commission of ISKCON, celebrities such as George Harrison and other luminaries that had come to see Srila Prabhupada, did he take the time or even have the thought to interrupt that and come down and have a word with me, who wasn't invited and didn't have a chance of getting up those stairs? So that, to me, is a siddhi, a miracle of love. From my spiritual master to me, no big shot, just a young kid with his girlfriend who didn't have a place to stay in London and ended up at the Hare Krishna temple, but left with a deeper faith than I had ever felt before. It is said in many places that Krishna fulfills the desire of his devotee in amazing ways, some big, some minuscule. Now, I don't claim to be a devotee of Krishna, but I've had the association of the devotees, the practitioners of devotional or bhakti yoga, since I was 15. I'm now 66 as I speak. For many years, I lived in Thailand, obviously eating quite a bit of Thai food. But, I harbored in my head, and I guess my heart, a kind of desire to have this beautiful rice pudding sweet that they have in India, and more specifically in Vrndavana, delicious rice pudding that I've always loved, called kheer. And it's a simple dish. It's just rice, which is boiled in milk rather than water, and then certain spices, added a little bit of masala, mostly just a drop or two of rose water and some sugar. And then they chill that. They might put in cashews and raisins. It's something I really like, but I hadn't had it in 20 years. So there were changes in my life which made me think perhaps I should at least dip my toe into the waters of devotional service of Krishna. To be honest, I'd have to say it was the sudden death of my wife in 2017. None of us is getting any younger. We're as young as we'll ever be today. And today will be tomorrow before we know it. So I decided to go back to India. And try as I might, I couldn't find kheer. Now, I thought for sure it would be on every street corner because verily there are sweet shops on every street corner. I mean, Krishna's the land of cows where milk is in great abundance, and this is basically a milk sweet. There's so many varieties of milk sweets that one can, avail themselves of in Vrindavan, but I couldn't find kheer. And I asked people, and they said, oh, well, this isn't the season, or whatever it was. They don't sell it. I went to one restaurant specifically after a long, circuitous route, and they made it for me, and it was just not good at all. So I just gave up on it. I'm just not going to get any acceptable kheer in Vrindavan or in India. So I just kind of put it out of my head. Well, I had to make a business trip to Rajasthan, which is nearby and well-known, to the city of Jaipur, more or less a desert city. I was living on the outskirts, so I was literally in a kind of desert. There were buildings around, but by and large it was sand. And I had to walk across quite a large expanse to get to town. And there was a hut in the middle of all this, and I mean made of brambles and thatch. And I didn't think anything about it. I was walking by, and an old man came out. And he obviously couldn't speak my language, but motioned for me to come inside. So what am I going to go in there for? I didn't have to be anywhere for a while, and he was a nice old man. To be polite, I went inside, and he motioned for me to sit down. Now, he had a small fire there, ingeniously hooked up so the place didn't fill up with smoke, and one pot, which had a kind of cheesecloth covered over the top. Very carefully and gently pulled back the cloth, took quite a large stainless steel metal bowl and ladle, and scooped something into the bowl and handed it to me. And, of course, we can probably guess by the nature of what's gone before that it was kheer. But it wasn't only kheer. It was the best kheer I ever had. It was beyond kheer. It was kheer plus. It was Krishna kheer. It was prasadam. Now, you could say that is a coincidence. Most probably was. Certainly anybody in science would agree that that would be the case. However, it could also be Krishna satisfying all the desires of his devotee, or in my case, wannabe. Now today, as I was walking to the studio, which is the impetus for this recording, I have been going through the exact same thing with another kind of very simple sweet called halava. I've been to numerous shops, including the famous Vrndavana sweets in Vrindavan, asking for halva. No, that's not a dish that we sell. This is something that's made in the home. Well, I'm staying with people that don't make it. And when I brought it up, they said, well, we make it, but it's only during a certain part of the year. So again, there's no halva. Just forget about it. But, I was almost to the point of harassing people about this thing. I want some halva. Anybody that would come by the house, hey, next time you come, can you bring some halva? Yeah, my mother will make some, and nobody ever did. So today, as I was walking to the studio, I saw an old woman who had a big bucket. Now, normally I don't walk to the studio, but I didn't have change for a tuk-tuk, and there was no place to change a big bill. So I just thought, the hell with it, I'll walk the kilometer or whatever it is. And so here's this woman that I never normally would have seen. So this woman, easily in her 70s and clearly a devotee of Krsna, took the ladle, gave me this lovely little hand-pressed bowl made out of leaves, biodegradable. They're ahead of the curve, I guess, in Vrindavan with the go green, no plastics stuff. And she put a whole bunch of halva in there. And this wasn't, again, just halva. This was exactly the kind of halva I had in my head. It's brown, it had raisins and cashews, and she smiled at me with her big toothless smile. I tried to give her some money. She, oh, no, Radhe, no. And I just walked the other half kilometer to the studio, eating the halva and licking my fingers. It was fantastic. Now, again, was it a coincidence? Am I crazy? Well, we know I'm crazy, but I'm not stupid. So this could, in fact, be Krishna satisfying the desires of his wannabe devotee, or in almost everyone else's case, devotees. I would never classify myself as such. As long as we're at it this afternoon, I'll tell you one more story which touched my heart for decades. There was a time in the 90s when I made about $9 million from the books that I had written and was writing. And I would take my holidays in Vrindavan, mostly once a year at least, for a month or two. But there was this kind of fashion at the time where devotees would take up the mantle of being a guru. And they were getting followers and a lot of money and respect and traveling around the world, and it looked like a good deal. And I've always had a healthy degree of narcissism and ambition, so I thought, well, why not me? So I transformed myself into Srila Jagannatha Das Puripad Maharaj. I'm not qualified to clean the toilet in the temple, but now I'm a guru. No, I'm an acharya. I'm beyond even that. I'm the highest of the high. Not quite the avatar, but close in my mind. So this was delusional, and it was dishonest. It was wrong. It was dumb. But a few people were doing it, so I just, got on the bandwagon being a kind of A-type personality. I think people will testify clearly that I must be. So I started wearing garlands and sunglasses and talking very slowly and looking into people's eyes and doing the whole guru trip. And I gave Diksha to about 50 or 60 young people. God rest their souls. I apologize. I don't know where they are now. I hope they've moved on in their spiritual life. But there was a time when I was with some people in Calcutta train station. If you've ever been there, you'll know that it's just filthy. People spit and God knows what on the platform, the gum and food, the kid, dirt. You can't imagine the bacteria, the disease. This is the Calcutta train station, probably one of the dirtiest places on earth. And I was standing there waiting for my train on the platform, and I looked around, and there was this most angelic, beautiful old woman in her 70s wearing all white sari, but a very nice one, It wasn't the normal cotton one, maybe silk even. I don't want to embellish anything. We're talking about Krishna here. I'm trying to be very honest with you. And she did a full Dandavat Pranam. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, she bowed down on that nasty, dirty, filthy platform.
in front of my feet paying obeisances because she thought, or maybe she saw, or was tricked into thinking, or for whatever reason was honoring me as the guru I clearly was not. And when she stood up, she was covered in filth. I can't imagine any dry cleaner anywhere in the world that could salvage that beautiful white sari. And then she turned silently and walked away. And it changed my life forever. I realized that I was a fraud, that I was a pretender, that I was a con man, that I was a spiritual criminal, preying on people's desire to be spiritual and taking with both hands whatever I could get from my quote-unquote disciples and the general public. After she left, I walked over to a nearby can and took off the 10 or 15 garlands that my devotees had put around my neck at the morning program and put them in the garbage. I was so ashamed. And it was a wonderful lesson from that lady in humility, truth, and that the qualities of a real devotee have to come from the heart and are born of compassion and a desire to serve all, love all, and ask nothing in return. So right there on that platform at the Calcutta train station, His Holiness Jagannatha Das Puripad, Goswami Maharaj Acharya, Avatar, you name it, died. And Jeffrey Giuliano. And now, so many years later, just Jagannath assumed my rightful place as a wannabe devotee of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. During my financial heyday in the early to mid-90s, as I said, I would come to Vrndavana, and I would often bring my wife, Vrindadevi, sometimes my children. But on one particular visit, I couldn't tell you the year, but I know it was during the winter months in America, which we always sought to escape because Lockport, New York is beautiful in the spring and summer, not so much in the winter. My wife and I were living in a very simple ashram, I remember. It was just a mat on stone floors, and every day it was the same lunch, potatoes and chapatis, maybe some dal. So here we were, millionaires, living this very, very simple life and loving it. The ashram was somewhere down near the Yamuna River, so generally speaking, in the morning, my wife and I would take a walk along the Yamuna. Now, at this time of the year, and I don't know the explanation for this, there was almost no water in the river. So the bank was exposed, and of course, there's no buildings there because it's generally speaking where the river would be. It had receded for reasons unknown to me. We were walking around 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, I had an idea to do a coffee table book, which I was doing a lot of in those days, this one called Unseen India. So I particularly like to take pictures of yogis or babas where I found them in India and always had a pretty good camera with me. This morning was no exception. I took a few sort of generic pictures, and then I saw this Baba, this very distinguished-looking yogi, walking towards me very slowly, very gracefully. He was dressed in brown. He had a small monkey stick, which you need in Vrindavan to keep the monkeys away. So there's so many and they're so aggressive. And he had a turban and a white beard, lovely beard, sort of parted in the middle, come to 2 points, and beautiful lotus eyes and brown skin. My wife was just behind me, and he walked closer, and he just came up to about 2.5, 3 feet away and stopped. Didn't say anything. Looked into my eyes, and I said, "May I take your picture, Baba?" And he just silently nodded yes. My wife all the time just behind my shoulder. I raised the camera, I took the photo, and he was gone. What do I mean gone? He laughed, turned around, no, just like Barbara Eden in I Dream of Jeannie, he was gone. He disappeared. He dematerialized.
before my eyes, which is an oxymoron. How do you do that? Disappear before somebody's eyes. I saw him disappear. Oh my gosh. My wife said, "Did you see," and didn't even get out the "that." I said, "Yeah, I sure did." Now, when you experience something like this, it's beyond the capacity of the limited mind and intellect to comprehend and process. So we started looking for explanations. Was there some place that he could, a sand dune, a hole, a tree? No, there was nothing. There was nowhere for him to go and no time for him to get there. Vrindavana Devi Dasi and Jagannatha Das, absolutely, unequivocally, without a word of a lie, as God is my witness, saw this yogi disappear. Or as we might say, Vedically dematerialized, this being a manifestation of a siddhi, or you could say magic power colloquially, that these yogis, through years and years of devotion and yogic practice, self-denial, tapasya, austerity, develop naturally within themselves. The purpose of which, displaying this before myself and my good lady wife, I do not know. It had the effect of strengthening our faith and understanding that life, as we perceive it, is but the tip of the iceberg, and that the greater part of our existence is unseen and unknown to us at any given time through the facility of our ordinary waking, sleeping, dreaming consciousness. The picture turned out great. I still have it. So this was another type of prasadam given to my wife and myself in Vrindavan. Much more dramatic than the sweet rice, kheer, or halava, but no less magical. No less Krishna displaying his unlimited opulences for the edification, education, and pleasure of his devotees. I can't explain it. I know that it's true. Some listeners may think that I'm mad, or that I'm exaggerating, or trying to sell an audiobook or something, which I've been known to do. But here I'm being perfectly honest with you. Vrinda, God bless her, sweet soul, fell down dead December 26, 2017, for no perceptible reason. But were she here, she would verify what I'm saying. So I'm speaking now for both of us. We saw a yogi, obviously very advanced, dematerialize on the banks of the sacred Yamunaji River, which is the personification of Yamuna Devi. And there at Keshi Ghat, where Krishna killed the Keshi demon over 5,000 years ago, performing his eternal pastimes, is such a sacred and holy spot. Speaking for Vrinda and myself, we are indeed thankful for that fateful experience.
Shri Radhe Sarveshwari Rasikeshwar Gan Shyam Karo Nirantar Vas Mein Shri Vrndavana Dham Radhe नित्य किशोरी राधा गौरी नित्य किशोरी राधा गौरी राधे 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 श्री वृंदावन ईश्वरी राधे श्री वृंदावन ईश्वरी राधे 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 नित्य विहारिणी श्यामादार नित्य विहारिणी श्यामादार राधे राधे श्री राधे 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 श्री राधे 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 श्री राधे 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 श्री वृंदावन ईश्वरी राधे श्री वृंदावन ईश्वरी राधे 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 श्री राधे 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 श्री राधे 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 नित्य विहारिणी श्यामादार नित्य विहारिणी श्यामादार राधे राधे श्री राधे 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 श्री राधे 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 श्री राधे राधे श्री राधे 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 राधे। राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन दान। राधा मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन दान। राधा मोहना राधा मोहना। राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना राधा मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना मेरे जीवन मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना राधा राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन। राधा 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 मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन। राधा मोहना राधा मोहन 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 जय राधे 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 जय राधे 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 मोहन 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 राधे राधा मोहना मोहना राधा राधा मोहन राधा मोहन राधा मोहन राधा राधा मोहन राधा मोहन राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन राधा मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन राधा मोहना मेरे जीवन धन राधा मोहना राधा मोहना मोहना मेरे जीवन धन राधा मोहना राधा मोहना
राधे 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 बोलो राधे गोविंद बोलो 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 राधे 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 बोलो राधे
Show me your unmasked face, shining like 1,000 suns in an empty sky. O ragged soul, unleash me from the body, free me from mind, release me from the iron grip of the senses, banish me forever from this weary world. Dear Redeemer, I bow to you by the reedy river, see you in the trees, gather you in the harvest, breathe you in the morning breeze. Soul shaker, shake loose my pride, turn me upside down, drown me in your foaming tide. Lord Sri Krishna, smiling cowherd of Vrindavan, allow me entrance into your abode, but only as a speck of dust along your road, or a feather fallen from your proud peacocks, a drop of water in your ocean. Nothing grand may I be, but grand enough to live with thee.
Radhe 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 Bolo, Radhe Govinda Bolo. Radhe 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 Bolo, Radhe Govinda Bolo. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jagannatha Das, A Brief Life Sketch. You Will Go Back to Godhead, Srila Prabhupada to Jagannatha Das, Summer 1971. My blessings to you for your work. Ramdas, 1973. I'm really behind what you're doing. More power to you. Timothy Leary, 1995. Jagannath really knows how to get a project done well. Mukunda Das Goswami, 1995. Born on September 11, 1953 in Rochester, New York, Jagannath grew up in the 1960s, an enthusiastic hippie of the highest order. Traveling around the world on his own from the age of just 13, touching down at such celebrated counterculture hotspots as Haight-Ashbury, Woodstock, the Isle of Wight, swinging London, and the East Village, Dasa was sold on the apparent virtue of the peace and love philosophy of the counterculture. In 1970, he became interested in the science of devotional yoga, or bhakti, and spent many years drifting between a life of discipline and meditation to the outer limits of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In November of 1972, he met his wife, Brenda Black, at a community college in Tampa, Florida. She later took the initiated name Vrndavana Devi Dasi. Forsaking drugs and meat in the mid-70s, Jagannatha became a well-known figure in the Ybor City art scene in Tampa, and later tucked himself away for 5 years in the wilds of western New York State, writing poetry, having babies, and solidifying his growing mindset to not only try and live the one-pointed life of a bhakti yogi, but impart the dynamic art to others. In 1980, he met His Divine Grace Bhakti Hirde Mangal Niloy Goswami Maharaj in Toronto, and along with his wife took initiation into the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu some 2 years later. Their new respective spiritual names were Jagannath Das and Vrndavana Devi. In between this landmark, the couple met and/or studied the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Baba Ram Das, Timothy Leary, and Paramahansa Yogananda. Gradually, the day-to-day reality of having to provide for a growing family, coupled with the highly artistic, contemplative nature of his work, ultimately convinced Jagannath to make a firm decision to follow the path of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to its logical conclusion. One of the early highlights for sometimes actor Jagannath was his portrayal of the marvelous magical Burger King and Ronald McDonald for the respective hamburger conglomerates, a strange turn for the confirmed ethical lacto-vegetarian. But Das, who had been acting professionally from the age of 12, considered the offbeat assignment simply another theatrical opportunity. Traveling throughout New England in the summer of 1978 with the top-drawer Burger King Roadshow, he experienced something very close to old-time vaudeville, appearing in tiny towns all around the Cape. In 1980, he was chosen from over 400 actors to play the part of Ronald McDonald for Canada. It was to be the official beginning of his grown-up career. Moving his family to the ethnic suburbs of Scarborough, Ontario, he stayed with McDonald's of Canada for exactly 1 year, and then left in disgust after witnessing what he considered to be the purposeful manipulation of children via the McDonald's advertising juggernaut. Further, as a person of conscience, the idea of promoting meat-eating to thousands of innocent young minds was not only repugnant, but karmically frightening. In the spring of 1984, Jagannath, desperate for a job, looked in the yellow pages under P for publisher, rang the first one he saw, and was offered a 3-country publishing deal for his first book, The Beatles: A Celebration, that very afternoon. It was to be a major turning point. After moving back to Niagara County, New York in 1986, Jagannath and Vrinda established the New Navadvip Vaishnava community in 1993 on 12-plus acres along the pastoral banks of the Erie Canal in Lockport. Legally incorporated in September of 1996 under the name of Shri, the Spiritual Realization Institute, the ambitious project was an international resource for those interested in the Vedic arts and sciences, as well as a fully functioning educational and cultural institution. Perhaps the greatest personal challenge met by Das was his solitary trek to India on pilgrimage in May of 1996. Landing in Delhi in the early morning, he braved the rigors of the accident-strewn Agra road, ending up in the holy township of Vrindavan, the place of Sri Krishna's transcendental pastimes some 5,000 years ago. From there he journeyed north from Delhi to Hardwar, where he bathed in the holy Ganges for the first time, before moving on to the peaceful village of Rishikesh in the foothills of the Himalayas. Asked to describe the most meaningful thing about his first trip to India, he had this to say. I used to lie in my bed in the ashram in Vrindavan, listening to the sounds of the early morning. All at once I could hear peacocks crying, bells ringing, beating drums, monks chanting, people laughing, and the clatter of horses' hooves on the cobblestones. In Vrindavan, the flowers bloom very early before daylight, so the air is filled with the perfume of flowering trees and plants of every description. I remember getting up at dawn once and watching a little barefoot girl of about 5 or 6 walking under the shaded canopy of the towering trees which lined Raman Reddy. Coming to a rather ordinary-looking oak, she reached up, touched it gently with her right hand, and then put her fingers to her forehead. She then bowed down in the red dust in front of the ancient tree. It was a wonderful, inexplicable, unimaginable event, until I realized that in India, the trees, the rivers, the mountains, the animals, everything, even a tree is holy. While in America, very little but the almighty dollar was. By 2020, Jagannatha Das has penned over 40 internationally best-selling biographies, published in over 15 languages, including Japanese, German, Italian, Dutch, and Spanish. In addition, following a chance encounter in 1995 with West Coast music company CEO Michael McLean of Delta Music in Santa Monica, California, Jagannatha signed on to produce a series of spoken word CDs and cassettes. 1,000 audiobooks later, he's still at it. Today, Jagannatha is a popular writer, producer, and narrator of audiobooks internationally, even starting his own company, Icon Audio Arts, in the early 2000s. Although his wife passed away unexpectedly in 2017, Jagannatha remains true to the Vaishnava culture which both of them dedicated their lives. This, then, is a little bit about Jagannatha Das. Hari Om Tat Sat.